All right, go for it.
Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, folks. It's V, the Grill Economist, and we have with us the man of the hour, Harley Schlanger, who's on back interviews. He's been busy like you would not believe. His demand is gone through the roof because he is the clarion voice of reason in one of the most chaotic times in human history. So without further ado, Harley, how are you, sir? Harley? Caesar, do we lose him?
Harley, you there? Harley, I think we lost his audio.
Harley?
Testing 1 2 3. Testing 1 2 3.
I hear you, Siege.
Yep, you can hear me. Okay. Hey, our YouTube audience, can you guys hear us? Okay. Let me drop him an email real quick. He may have tabbed out to a different window or something.
Or the YouTube gods knew that he was on and they had to silence him.
Email real quick. Okay, yeah. He did drop, and he's going to be signing on. Okay, yeah, he'll be right back on. But V, did you know Harley has been also doing some stuff over on, I don't know if it's the Schiller Institute or LaRouche PAC, doing some programs as well. So good for him.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, he's been doing a daily live stream over at the Schiller Institute. Folks, go check it out, schillerinstitute.org, as well as larouchepac.com. And, Harley, people don't realize this. Harley meets with a lot of parliamentarians. He meets with presidents. He meets with a lot of, top, political people. So, and policymakers, you name it. And one of the things that he's always an advocate for is to have an equitable global economic system in place that all countries can benefit. Very multipolar. I love the way he thinks, man. He's just a brilliant guy. Harley, are you back?
Yeah, I forgot. I moved to my other studio and forgot to change the Wi-Fi connection. I'm sorry.
That'll do it.
No worries.
All right, Harley. So the stage is yours. I've done the typical great introduction, and it is. I'm gonna leave it to you, Harley. What's new, Harl?
Well, let me make a couple of general points first, which is that you're seeing the pressure now to put an end to distancing and mitigation and this and that, and I think we've got to look at something very seriously here, which is that before we make the decision that we're going to save the economy by ending the social distancing because we've won the war, we got to win the war first. And I'm not sure that we're at a point where we can take down the minimal protection that we've set up in terms of the health projects that have been carried out in the last weeks. But there's another question here, which is probably more profound. What are we going back to? Are we going to go back to business as usual? Because that sure is what the Federal Reserve bailout is pointing toward. They're bailing out the speculators. They're talking about a little bit more money now for small business. But, I don't think the banks are set up in a way that they can carry out the volume of loans for small business that are being allocated by the Federal Reserve System. Meanwhile, the billions that are going to the large shadow banking corporations, those funds are available. The Fed is now buying junk bonds. The corporate sector added $200 billion in junk bonds in the last 3 months, and now the Fed is buying those up. So I think we have to look at two things. One, make sure that we have the coronavirus under control, not under control, but crushed. And that means we have to look at the rest of the world because, as many people are pointing out, if this spreads to the southern hemisphere during their winter, what's going to keep it from coming back to the northern hemisphere next November and December? So we've got to make sure we are better prepared to deal with it. And then secondly, let's have a real economic shift away from this casino economy into the American system. And if we don't do that, there will be no normal.
Yeah, absolutely. The fear the abject fear of this whole entire virus that's been amplified and blown out of proportions, that has to be taken away. And I think we're at a turning point right now. Today, this morning, the New York, where I'm at right now, we've reported an absolute plunge in hospitalizations, an absolute plunge, Harley. So there's some headway being made here.
Well, that's the point. I saw Dr. Birx yesterday who said that the way that we're approaching it is working. And we saw the same thing with China. We saw it with South Korea. We're seeing it now with Italy and Spain. So we know what to do to lower the rates. And in the meantime, because of the Defense Production Act, because of the Project Airlift, which the Chinese are shipping goods here, we're getting goods from around the country into New York in particular, we're better prepared to deal with it. So, but we have to ask ourselves, why weren't we prepared in the first place? Is it completely impossible that we knew that there could be some kind of pandemic? And the fact is, we know that we knew that there would be at some point. That's what the whole Gates Foundation, World Economic Forum war games were back in November in New York. They knew something would happen. Now, does that mean Bill Gates caused it? I don't think he has that kind of power. But the fact is that people did know that we might face something like this. So why did we tear down our public health sector? Well, for the same reason we tore down banking regulation, for the same reason we allowed manufacturing to go under in the United States, because we went to this global system based on just-in-time deregulation, privatization, so that we no longer had the capability for logistics in depth. Right. And that was praised. If you go and read what the globalists say, they say the greatest thing we did was move to the just-in-time economy. Well, how well did that work when it turned out that 95% of our pharmaceuticals come from overseas and 90% of it comes from China? So we've got to sustain a fully sovereign, full-set economy in the United States and work with other countries to do the same thing in their country. And if we do that, we can come out of this having learned a lesson. But the real lesson here is don't let the people who tried to run Russiagate against Trump keep their fingers on the buttons of the economy. Correct. We've got to take it away from the money center banks and the Federal Reserve and the global central banks. And V, let me just tell you one thing from Europe. The Italian government was told, okay, you can go ahead and issue a 25 billion euro bond. This was after 3 weeks of fighting with the EU. And the Italians finally said, we're going to do it whether you agree or not. And the European Union said, well, you can do it as long as you sign on to the European Stability Mechanism, which is the new means of top-down banking control for the EU as a whole. And the Italian Prime Minister Conte yesterday basically said, forget it. When this thing is over, it's highly unlikely we're going to stay in the European Union. So I think we're seeing some good news coming out of this, which is that the idea that the unity and solidarity of the European Union would hold it together, there's no unity and there's no solidarity. Yeah. And we see it in the way they're treating Serbia, the way they're treating Hungary, the way Spain was treated, Greece was treated, Portugal was treated. The bankers said, why should we have Euro bonds? You countries are poor, we're not going to help you out. And these countries said, we've been paying our damn debts to you, and right. You've bankrupted us, and now you're not going to let us issue credit to protect our people?
No, only austerity.
Yeah. So I think this is a very positive development. And then the other side of it, in spite of all the people who, I just crack up on watching the Washington Post, which at the same time blames Trump and blames China for the pandemic. And,
oh my God.
You look at what, there were some missteps made in the United States, but those weren't Trump's. Trump was dealing with the cards he was dealt. After Bush Jr. and Obama and the privatization schemes, the health system was pretty much wrecked. Obamacare went a long way toward wrecking the health system in the United States. As for China, they made some missteps at first also, because they didn't know what they were dealing with. Once they got on their feet, they did a pretty good job, and now they're helping. They're sending plane loads of equipment to the U.S. And when we find things that are not of the highest quality, we send it back and they replace it. And they've been doing that. And the president has been praising them. The only thing I find more crazy than the Washington Post blaming Trump and China is the coverage of Bernie Sanders. And V, I just have to mention this because it just tickles me so much. Bernie Sanders, the revolutionary, who's building a revolutionary movement, when he doesn't get the votes, he not only drops out, but he endorsed Hillary Clinton in 2016 and campaigned for her. He'll do the same for Biden.
Sure.
What kind of revolutionary is that?
Mm-hmm. And on top of that, Harley, he just bought himself another house. Now he has 4 houses. He's such a good socialist, Harley.
He needs one for each face.
That's what it is. Unbelievable.
No, I mean, what I'm pointing to is, forget Bernie for a minute. It's the media. What is true is there is a potential revolutionary moment with a movement to back it up. And by revolutionary, I don't mean communist or socialist. I mean just people who have had it up to their eyeballs.
Sure.
With the globalists, with the elitists, with this establishment which is corrupt to the core, which ran 3 years of Russiagate to try to destroy Trump's administration. And in support of the remnants of the Obama-Bush destruction of the country. And when it comes to the next election, they somehow say Joe Biden is the solution when I'm not sure Biden remembers who he is.
Exactly right. Oh my God! What is? No one even knows what Biden's even talking about, Harley.
Well, I mean, I think he probably sits in front of a camera in his basement all day.
Yeah.
When you see him, he does have the deer in the headlights look in his eyes. The camera comes on and it's sort of like, are we doing something? Am I supposed to say something? Well, let me see. What was I thinking about? And, you have that hesitation there. I think the strategy is destroy Trump by letting the economy completely collapse. And then put someone like Kamala Harris, who's a complete hardcore fascist, in as the vice president. And she will be the female Obama. Or maybe that's what do you call it? Well, anyway, she would be the Obama with a pantsuit.
And folks, we're very loosely using that term female. But go ahead, Harley.
Well, I meant when I said female Obama, I meant to say that might be an oxymoron.
It is an oxymoron. I just got leaked a picture of Michael. It's a picture of Barry, Bill Gates, and Michael all hanging out. I have a picture of it. Michael is very, very manly. I will say that, Harley. This is before the hormone treatment.
But if you put her up against Barack Obama and Bill Gates, of course she looks tough.
Oh my gosh, she looks massive. Her traps are bigger than mine. It's tremendous.
Now, the important point here that we shouldn't lose sight of is that we're still in an extremely dangerous moment. And I want to bring up the situation around Captain Crozier as an example of that. Here was a commander of a nuclear aircraft carrier who was facing an untenable situation on a ship with soldiers dropping left and right from coronavirus. And when he called on the Navy to do something, someone leaked it to the San Francisco Chronicle. No one knows who yet. But the Secretary of the Navy, the acting secretary, fired him, went after him. And when he flew to Guam to go on the aircraft carrier to explain himself, he made the following statement. He said, "What really concerned me about what Crozier said is that it doesn't matter if we go to port because we're not at war." And Maudley said, "We are at war. We're at war with China." This guy Maudley is part of this Education at Sea group, which is an artificial intelligence group, which says that in modern warfare, we don't have time for the cognitive processes to take effect. We have to have artificial intelligence make the determinations when to launch a strike. So this is the guy who fired a captain who showed commendable commitment to his troops, to the sailors on board. And he was fired by a guy who says he was probably too naive and stupid for the command.
Yeah,
Instead,
and Harley, this is the guy who fired him, Modley. Modley is the type of guy who's never even fired a water gun in his life. Modley's the type of guy, his conflict is whether if he could wear his leggings the night before he goes to sleep, Harley. That's probably the limit to any sort of a hardship or combat Modley has ever faced. And the audacity of Modley to get on a PA of the aircraft carrier and berate the sailors. I mean, it's disgusting. I mean, who are these neocons?
Right.
It sickens me.
He didn't just berate Crozier, he berated the sailors for cheering their commander.
Yeah.
Their commander stood up for them.
Yep.
And I think this tells you something about the difference between the people who send our young people to war and the people who go to war. The people who go to war, it's not their choice to go to war, but they'll do their duty. But their commanders don't give a damn about their well-being.
No.
And I think this is quite significant because this whole idea, Modley is part of this revolution in warfare, which was the Donald Rumsfeld theory. And how well has that worked? Look at Iraq. Look at the situation that Rumsfeld left in the Middle East. So when Trump says we've got to end these wars, that establishment goes nuts. Well, we have to end these wars and we have to move toward cooperation. And the potential now for US-China cooperation, US-Russia cooperation has never been greater. Trump had a phone call yesterday with King Salman and probably with Mohammed bin Salman and Putin to discuss the oil situation. And it appears as though they're moving towards some kind of resolution there, which will help all countries. In the meantime, Trump has had several discussions with Xi Jinping. He's been in touch with Abe. He's been in touch with Modi. He's been in touch with Macron, with Conte in Italy. He's conducting diplomatic policy on the highest level.
Right.
And the CNN reporters are down there trying to start a war between him and Fauci.
Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. Unbelievable.
So my hope is that we'll find some more out about the coronavirus. We'll move towards some kind of resolution of not just leveling the curve, but crushing it, and get to the point where we'll then be able to talk about this question of how do we restart the economy. And hopefully there will be some people who are talking to the president who will make sure he knows that giving $6 trillion to Wall Street swindlers headed by Fink from BlackRock is not the way you get the economy going again.
No, it definitely isn't. I mean, the money printing to this point. Did you hear Chamath Palihapitiya, the venture capitalist from Social One?
No.
He was on CNBC yesterday, and we played the clip earlier in the day, today. And yeah, I could not believe they even let him on CNBC. He goes, "Look, this is a lie of Wall Street. All they're doing, these bailouts, are just propping up zombie institutions. Let them all fail. Let them all fail. They deserve. These are poorly managed zombie institutions and family offices. Who cares if they can't have a summer vacation in the Hamptons? Who cares? Let them all fail. Let them all get wiped out."
Well, very interesting. There have been three voices in Europe that were very strong in the same point. One is Hans Werner Sinn, who's the head of the IFO Institute, which is a leading economic think tank. And until recently, he's been a leading promoter of neoliberalism, privatization, bailouts, and so on. But he came out the other day in an op-ed and he said, look, who are we kidding? This will lead to hyperinflation, and it has nothing to do with protecting the people or rebuilding the economy. Then Giulio Tremonti, the former economics minister of Italy, who, by the way, is very close to our organization. He's spoken at several conferences with Mr. LaRouche and with Mrs. LaRouche. Tremonti just said that the treatment of Italy shows that the European Union is all about the bottom line for banks and the so-called solidarity of the bankers, but not for the people. And then a man named Peltier, who's the former deputy chairman of the Banque de France, the Central Bank of France, came out and said, everything we're hearing from the bankers is crap. It's going to collapse the world economy. We need a new Bretton Woods, and we need a Glass-Steagall system. So you're beginning to see people echoing what you and I have been talking about and what the LaRouche movement has been pushing for years. Getting back to sound banking principles, taking power away from the money center banks who control credit through the central banking system. And the reason that's so important, especially for the United States, is read the damn Constitution. There's nothing in the US Constitution that says the money center banks will control credit, currency, and debt. It says that should be in the hands of Congress. Now, I know what people say. They say, well, Congress is a bunch of clowns. That's because they're controlled by the money center bankers. If we, the people, made the congressmen more frightened of us than they are of not getting their money from Wall Street lobbyists, we could turn the Congress into an institution that would defend the sovereign interests of the American people. So it's really on us. It's on the American people. Study economics, become clear on these issues, and then go out and propagate this idea of a Hamiltonian credit system, of a regulated banking system, and of investing in the real physical economy instead of the bubble economy.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. Very well said. Harley, any last minute closing statements?
My feet are going up. Tomorrow on Saturday, April 11th at 2 p.m. on the LaRouchePack.com website, we're going to have a discussion. Helga Zepp-LaRouche will be on. I'll be on. We have an economist from Guatemala who's very prominent in the group of 77 and group of 20. What we're going to be talking about is precisely this, an online webcast at LaRouchePack.com, 2 p.m. Eastern. We're going to be talking about how to rebuild the world economy. Yeah. So I would encourage people to tune in and call in your questions. We'll have a hookup so that we'll be able to take questions from the live audience.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Folks, we're at the end of the show. Again, go check out Harley over at the LaRouchePack.com and the SchillerInstitute.org. The links will be in the description box. And with that being said, Harley, thank you so much for joining us. Simply amazing. Glad that you're doing great out there, my friend. Hang in there, and this will all be behind us. So thank you all for listening in. Take it away, CJ.